And I'll start us. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Still catching my breath. I sprinted in because I had it.
Okay, well, it looks like we have all of the commissioners in attendance tonight. Are there any ex parte communications or conflicts of interest to disclose? Okay. Let's go ahead and get started. Our items tonight are legislative, and I just want to read the kind of the guidelines for public comments during meetings. So time is made available for anyone in the audience to address the commission concerning matters pertaining to city business. Citizens will be asked to limit their remarks or questions to 5 minutes each. Any materials that are displayed or referenced, such as pictures or written materials, are part of the record and must be left with the commission. Speakers are required to have signed in at the door and will state their name and the city they reside in before beginning their remarks. If you agree with the previous speaker, please state your agreement to avoid repetitious remarks. Speakers shall address the commission from the podium or the microphone and shall address all comments to the Planning Commission. So are there any public comments for items that are not on the agenda tonight? We will have an opportunity during the public hearing that we will be holding tonight. Okay. So with that, we're going to start with our first legislative item. And this will be a public hearing, consideration and recommendation regarding a legislative amendment to consider amending North Ogden Code Title 11-9, residential and civic zones regarding small lot, single-family zones. And our presenter tonight is Scott Hess, the Community and Economic Development Director.
Thank you, Chair. So this rezone application was tied to the annexation process for the Pauling Atkins property that the developer is currently working on. And we heard notice today that the annexation has been appealed at the county level, and that appeal process can take as long as 90 days. So the applicant had requested that this item and the following item be postponed to a future planning commission date on the other end of that appeal timeframe to see what happens with that. So I can run through a little bit about what this was and their thought process behind it, but we also have the applicant online who I'd like to hear from to make sure that that's still the process they'd like to do. This particular item was formally posted in public notice and public hearing, so we do need to hold a public hearing for it. And then one point of clarification is that item 2 on the agenda tonight was listed as a public hearing. It should have been just a public meeting. On that one, we held the public hearing at the last meeting. So depending on what the Planning Commission wants to do in hearing comments, there's really not a huge change in that project from what was proposed before to now. We may be able to postpone that item as well if that's the applicant's desire.
Okay. And just so everybody knows that second item, the annexation request, that there will be a public hearing at the city council level.
Yep.
And that postponement can last as much as 90 days.
As long as 90 days. So that the original intent with the applicant's intent was to ask Planning Commission to make a recommendation on the land use zone tonight and a recommendation to City Council on the rezoning text amendment. Those two would have moved forward regardless of Planning Commission's decision, just as part of their due diligence process, and then be heard at a City Council meeting that was scheduled for December 9th. With the postponement, the city cannot hear that annexation until the county appeal process is satisfied. And that's the piece that can take as long as 90 days. So it's possible that this wouldn't come back to us until late February, March timeframe.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. And the applicant, Derek Terry, is online with us. It's up to you if you want to hear from him now or.
Yeah, Derek Terry's here if you want to.
Yeah, Mr. Terry.
Yes. Yeah, I just confirm what Scott said.
We're going to go ahead and hold a public hearing tonight on the consideration and recommendation regarding the proposed zoning change.
Zoning text amendment.
And are you interested in presenting anything to discuss that at this time?
I am not. I'm just
Okay.
interested, like Scott said, in postponing. With the postponement, we don't know if we will even have anything to be able to go forward with. So we'll need to find out then. And once we find out, we'll go from there. But as of right now, yes, the request is to postpone both items from me, the applicant.
Okay, thank you, sir. So, Mr. Hess, I would like to go ahead and hold the public hearing. Would you like to have a presentation prior to?
The presentation, so this is a small lot, single family zone. This was recommended, the red lines here were provided by the applicant. It's amendments to the existing Quail Ponds Planned Unit Development Zone. That's the property west of the skinny portion of the annexed area. Going through that, the Quail Ponds zone, that PUD zone that was Article H, it would still remain in our zoning code. And this being used as a template for it, all of that information already is currently in our zoning code. So the purpose and intent, the name would be changed to the small lot residential zone R14. We have an R15 zone already. This is, again, minor amendments off of that, but it would allow a minimum lot area of 5,000 square feet. Currently in Quail Ponds, it allows down to 4,290 square feet. Lot width minimum of 55 feet. The other changes are that the rear lots, which are slightly different than Quail Ponds, that permitted down to a 10-foot rear yard on certain lots. This would be 15-foot consistent across all of the lots, and then a 30-foot tall maximum height. So they've got a house plan that doesn't maximize the normal 35 feet height, which we have in all of our other single-family zones, but isn't as constrained as the 27-foot, 1.5 story that Quail Ponds has. That's required anyone with a 2-story to do kind of like an attic style second story. So 30 foot was what they've asked for. And then lot coverage percentage stays the same. So this is a tweak on that Quail Pond zone. And that's what the applicant has requested. And this would be a zoning text amendment that would facilitate that development as proposed through the annexation. So the process would be, if the commission, you can vote to accept, deny, or amend this, and then they're asking for this to be applied to the annexation, and then both pieces would move forward at some point in the future to city council for their consideration of the legislative items.
I have one point of clarification because it may answer a lot of questions for everybody, but can you just take a minute to explain the current process for something that is not, say, doesn't fit into one of our zones, but we would be looking for like a PUD, a planned unit development, or some kind of development agreement to create a special zone such as Quail Ponds or a few other developments that we have in our city, say a senior, housing development or something like that, where there is a mechanism in place in our processes that accommodate this type of special request, but it allows us to look at it on a case-by-case basis and work with an interactive development agreement. So there is a mechanism in place right now to accommodate something like this within our city.
Yeah, there's several ways that a project like this could be entitled. So one is you create a new zoning district, and if the city planning commission recommends it and the council adopts it, then that zoning district, this R14, would be applicable to any property that wanted to come in and rezone, just as our R15, R18, R10, all of our other zoning districts are eligible zones to be applied for because they're on the books, right? And the council gets to make the law. So they are the legislative body. They have ultimate power in that. That's slightly different than taking a standard underlying zone like an R15 and then saying to the council, while we do this rezone, we would like to change these individual bits and pieces and do that through a development agreement, which is essentially a contract. So those are zoning by contract. It's a little bit less assurance for the developer. If you have a zone, you're entitled and you know what numbers you get. When you enter that development agreement, it's fully just a contract and negotiation between the city and the developer. And we have dozens of development agreements. They're extremely common all over Utah. They're common in North Ogden. Quail Ponds has a development agreement. Village of Prominence Point has one, Cherry Springs Villas, which is the kind of 55 and plus community that's north and west of the Public Works building. There's a whole bunch of them. Then we have development agreement zones going back to like Lakeview, which is in the 70s and 80s. So it's not an uncommon practice. So they could have gone that direction. So we would like to annex the property with an R15, and the caveat being with these changes through a development agreement. And there's just any number of entitlement tracks that this could have taken. This one, the applicant chose, let's create a zone. That zone facilitates the type of development we want to do, and then bring that package to city council for consideration and potential adoption.
But when we look at that zone,
Mhm.
it would be a new zone applicable to anywhere in the city.
Yep. Yep.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that clarification. Okay, so at this time, I'd like to go ahead and open a public hearing. Unless you guys had any other questions for Mr. Hess before we,
So to clarify, we're not voting on anything tonight, correct?
we're going to
Right.
make a recommendation. We're going to listen to the public hearing.
Okay.
So
Consideration.
yeah, based on the applicant's desire to have it postponed, we
Mhm.
have to hold the public hearing. That's just part of the due process of law since we've publicly noticed the public hearing. So we'll let anybody speak on that. You'll open the public hearing. We'll hear comments on the R15 zoning text amendment piece of it. That will essentially satisfy by our code and state code, the public hearing process. And then based on the applicant who's paid the fee and made this item, brought this item forward, that staff would recommend, and the applicant is asking for a postponement of it. So it isn't a denial recommendation, anything
Oh.
at this point. It's just postpone the item. And that would be to a date undetermined at this point. It'll postpone it until after the appeal process that's been filed at the county is satisfied, and then it's available to come back to the city to
Okay.
continue going through its process.
And would it come back to the
So
planning
no
commission?
recommendation. No.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And so would we discuss it after the public hearing on our opinions tonight, or postpone the entire
Well, so this one,
conversation?
we're combining the two issues. So the first item is just the zoning text amendment. So if we separate that entirely from the annexation, and it's just somebody has come in and asked for a zoning text amendment, but then they say, no, I want to put the brakes on this and hold it, that could be postponed to the next meeting or 6 months, or they could pull the application altogether. So that one they are independent projects. They're married just because this zoning text amendment facilitates the type of development they want to do in the annexation. So since the applicant has applied for them in conjunction with one another, my guess is they would come back. But because this is just a standalone zoning text amendment, the applicant could decide, well, let's go ahead with it and move it forward at the next meeting. And we'll just listen for them asking for us to request it to be put back on the agenda.
Okay, so you would recommend we don't discuss it
You can just- yeah, you-
afterwards and make.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome to discuss it and provide feedback. Absolutely. Just the
Okay.
recommendation is a request
hold.
for postponement.
Okay.
Yep.
Great. Okay, so I'd like to go ahead and open the public hearing. So we'd be more than happy to hear from gentlemen here in front would be great. Thank you, sir.
Hi, my name is Kent Williams. I'm a builder and been a developer for years myself. I've applied for dozens and dozens of land use permits to pour people's concrete, and we always hit this number of we got to have enough green space for water density and all that kind of thing. So the problem I have with this, I'm not against the development at all, but when the canal gets to peak capacity like it did the year before last, the city then comes and tells me they're going to run water down in front of my property and right down past mine for the overflow emergency access. And they require me to keep that clear so that they don't flood everybody out. So if we're starting to push high density into these places, that is going to be more of a norm than a 100-year flood kind of thing. So that's my concern with that. That we're following rules. Everybody else has to follow these rules when they pour a driveway or something. I have to go through all the calculations and make sure falls in that guideline. This kind of thing is way out of those limits. And we're going to push all that water down the canal and it's not going to be able to handle. I know it won't. So anyway, I've got a drawing here. It's pretty crude, but I did a drawing just with the magic marker real quick, showing that there's an alternative developing this piece. And I think we ought to look at making more lots. There's a lot of people that are in starter homes in this area. And why aren't we making lots that the next step up, people want to build a nice home, 3-car garage, RV parking. I mean, I have to deal with this all the time when I pour concrete. Why aren't we pushing more of that and keeping the water levels to a minimal? That'll be,
Sir, before I look at your display, I just want to clarify that the public hearing we're holding right now is solely based on this proposed new zoning
Correct.
designation.
so the issue I have with that, if we,
This is R15.
I don't know if you're aware of this developer, but this preliminary plot is a final plot. If you look at it carefully, all the dimensions are in there, all the radius is in there. All he's trying to do is get the zoning done, and then it's a slam dunk for him or any other person that comes in here. Property across the street from me, same kind of deal. So if we allow that higher density, we're going to create a lot of water problems. That's what I'm opposed against. And that's why it doesn't make sense. If
Okay.
that's clear.
Yeah. So
So-
you would be, give me your opinion on the R14 zone for the.
Well, I don't think it's applicable because that high density, we've got too many hard surfaces and it's going to be a problem. I mean, you're taking farm ground. We're already at a peak capacity when we have a high spring runoff. You're going to hard surface all that. You're going to have really a lot of problems. And so there's a reason why the city planners of long ago said, we got to have so much green space. We got to have so much minimal hard surfacing. That's because we got to protect that water being able to soak in the ground and not just run off and deal with it. Because what happened year before last when I opened the ditch, made it bigger so they could maximize a 24-inch line coming down there. Everybody downstream couldn't handle that much water. So their property all flooded. Well, it just goes down. This is upstream for me now, and it's going to affect everybody. And they told me, well, if you don't do something, then Pleasant View, all these foams that flood, I'm liable. What do you mean I'm liable? I'm just a homeowner that you've got this overflow thing running through my property. And so those kind of things need to be addressed on how they're going to handle the increase in water. And I think that's why the city plan doesn't have these high density zones, and they shouldn't allow them. They should stick with what's working and be careful, open spaces and a way to slow that flow down in the spring. When we have the park over that turns into a lake, over by the school. I mean, that's the kind of thing that has to happen to flow this down. But if we're going to hard surface everything, it's going to create a ton of problems.
And do you mind if we keep your,
Sure. And it's crude, but I mean, if you could get the drawings and get it
Thanks
to
for doing
scale, it would work.
Thanks for the map.
forward as
Sure.
well to the developer?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Kara, may I ask a question, please? For the
Is it,
clarification.
could you hold on just a second, sir? I'm going to go outside a little bit of this structure and allow Commissioner Gardner to ask a point of clarification to Mr. Hess.
Scott, question regarding the percent impervious on the lot.
Yep.
Whether we have R14 or R10, we're still having the same percentage, aren't we, of allowable hard surfaces?
It's slightly less in the small zone. So it's Title 11-20-2 in the landscaping code, which has the minimum vegetative coverage. So what needs to be open, not roof, not hardscape, not extra garages or sheds or anything like that. So in all of our zones, it's 50% except for R15, Quail Ponds, Roylands Farms, a few other small lot, single family, it goes down to 40%. So you have to keep 40% of the total lot area open as landscaping or impervious area.
Okay, that answers that. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, sir. Please, if you could state your name.
Thank you. I'm John Telly, and I live in North Ogden. And I see I'll limit my comments to two tragic flaws with the R14 zone. Number one, I saw no language in the R14 zone statement that protected the children from increased traffic. And let me use the Atkinson-Pauling proposal as an example. The Atkinson-Pauling proposal has two exits at the 925 East. I live on one of those exits. And children, American children, ride in the streets. They ride their skateboards, their trikes, their bicycles. And it's because we can't provide neighborhood parks for them. And mom and dad can't always haul them off to Barker Park. I don't even think Barker Park has a place for children to ride their bikes. So they're going to be out in that street and on the sidewalk, in the street. That's just what they do. One lady in our neighborhood, again, I live at 925 East, 1900 North. She put a sign out in the street, children playing, and she put it in the middle of the right lane. Now, the reason she can get by with that is that we almost never see two cars come down our street in opposite directions. It's very quiet. With this new development, you're adding 67 homes, probably over 130 cars, and maybe two-income families. So you got 50 to 60 cars leaving each exit in the morning and returning at night. You're very likely going to increase our traffic and these exits dump right into neighborhoods. The real connector streets like 1700 or even 2100, they're away from the neighborhood. So you're going to easily increase our traffic by a factor of 10. There needs to be language in the R14 that says no new development will risk the livelihood of the children by immeasurably increasing the traffic into the neighborhoods. Secondly, this new development does not blend with the neighborhoods around it. If you look at the neighborhoods around this new development, they're typically single-story homes with scattered two-story homes. This new development is a constant 2 stories with a 10-yard separation, 5-yard offset from the property line. Boom, boom, boom. On the long edges, both the north edge and the south edge, you've got 2 rows of 2-story homes separated by 10 feet. That does not blend with either neighborhood on the north or on the south. I think that R14 zoning should have another statement that says any new development, especially of development such as this nature, which is buried in established neighborhoods that have been there for years. I've lived in my own home for 6 years, 6.5. And I know many people in the Ferdwin Estates have been there much longer. Any new development that's buried in existing neighborhoods needs to blend with the neighborhoods.
Thank you, sir. Sir?
Hi. Good evening. My name is Brent Call. I'm a resident of North Ogden. And being here this evening feels a little bit like deja vu. I was here 2 weeks ago to make some similar comments. Before you tonight are 2 different matters, which are codependent on each other. And for right now, we just want to address the R1 zoning question. I'm prepared to make comments on both items. And the comments are intertwined, but I'm prepared to address each one separately. I'll let others address. I want to focus on the city code and the general plan, and I'll let others address other major concerns such as flooding, traffic safety, preservation of the neighborhood, character, for which I know they are very well prepared. But let's start with the R1 zone designation. I cannot identify any justifiable need for this zoning category, other than to aid this particular developer with obtaining approval for his project. Their suggestion is to take the existing Quail Ponds PUD zone designation and modify it to this new R14 designation, essentially creating a modified R15 zone with smaller setbacks and allowance for two-story homes, creating a new higher density housing zone. The city already has a process for creating zone designations of this type. These are called planned unit developments, as you've already talked about, covered by section 11-13 of the code, as Quail Ponds is currently designated. This section identifies the need and the criteria for creating such projects, how to evaluate them, and approve them. If this developer wants to do something outside of the existing zone designations, they should do so under the current approved processes unless they can demonstrate a compelling need for a new designation beyond their personal wishes. Because they want to shoehorn a project into a constrained property is not a good reason. Unless I misunderstood the zoning and building codes, because they are proposing private roads that do not meet city public works standard requirements, this project will still require a PUD approval to allow for these private roads and exceptions. It makes no logical sense than to create a new zoning designation other than to wiggle our way into an approved process. In my business, we call that scope creep. I'll call it zoning creep or bait and switch. In fact, let's talk about Quail Ponds PUD. Since it's being used as the template and justification for both the zoning change and the ultimate zoning description designation, I live directly north of Quail Ponds. My backyard borders multiple homes in this neighborhood. They are great neighbors, but if the city had not allowed for zoning creep, I do not think some of those homes would be there. When we purchased our property, we did quite a bit of due diligence in understanding the general plan and anticipated growth in the area. Our property is unique, and we knew we were planning a more rural project that would end up eventually in a developed neighborhood. Quail Ponds was in the early stages of building, with the first phases being done. The plot plan presented to the city took into account designated wetlands in the project, some of which bordered our property. There was designated open space to preserve those wetlands, with a proposed walking path that eventually would connect the neighborhoods on the east to the existing neighborhoods on the west, down to Green Acres and Orton Park. What a great plan, we thought. As the development progressed, we found out that the developer had negotiated some sort of wetland swap to allow these areas to be developed and abandon the open green space in the paths for more building lots, resulting in the loss of one of the major reasons for a PUD. We've seen the same creep with other projects like Providence Point and Roylands Farms. I view this attempt at rezoning as just another form of zoning creep. This commission is tasked with being an advisory board for the city council. As stated in section 12.2.1 of the municipal code, to provide for the health, safety, and welfare, aesthetics of the city and its present and future inhabitants.
It's time.
To protect both urban and non-urban development.
Sorry, sir. I'm sorry. Go ahead, please.
Among other things. We are a people governed by a constitution and the rule of law. I know the city council takes a constitutional oath. I don't know if this commission does the same, but you are under the same obligation . I know most, if not all of the council and you on this commission take that obligation very seriously. But I am concerned that at times we are willing to treat our codes as suggestions and our guidelines as wish lists. It should be with careful consideration and for very compelling reasons that you approve changes to the code and deviate from the guidelines of the general plan. Ultimately, you work for us. We want to work with the landowners and developers to build a well-planned and pleasing community that addresses the needs of all as outlined in the goals, codes, and plans of the community. When it comes to clashes between those interests, the interests of the citizens within the constraints of the code must take precedence. I urge the commission to recommend against any change to the zoning code. If this developer thinks this project is viable, they should use the existing laws for approval. If it's a good project, the current process does not impede their ability to apply for approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Who would like to speak next? Anybody? I mean, yes. Not tonight, we aren't. It's going to be, the applicant has requested that they be postponed because an appeal has been received by the, well, we're holding just the hearing tonight, public hearing for the zone text amendment. Item number 4, even though we know that they are interconnected, but we actually already held a public hearing at this level, at the planning commission level at our last meeting for that item. So there will be a public hearing for that annexation request at the city council level.
I feel like it used to be both items. We're all here for.
Both items are also going to be postponed due to the request of the applicant.
Right.
They were probably, no, they were noticed by the city.
There won't, but
Which is why we're having a public hearing.
there won't be.
The annexation was also noticed by the city. So it actually was noticed as a public hearing for the annexation.
I understand, sir. As Mr. Hess mentioned earlier, they had posted that, I guess, in error because we actually held a public hearing on this at the last meeting.
I understand that, but if you public noticed it, that would legally, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, would actually require you to have that at some point in time.
So we will be postponing that item tonight, the second item.
Fair enough. But I'm actually going to talk to you about the R14.
Would love to hear
Okay.
that. Thank you.
So my big concern is fire.
Can you state your name, sir?
Sure. My name is Douglas Nandel and I'm North Ogden resident. And my big concern is fire because with these houses, as I pointed out last time, the 15-foot, but these houses are going to be 10 feet, which is basically 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. From here to there. If you have a fire, multiple houses will burn. Ask North Davis Fire. They've seen it in North Salt Lake. Multiple houses burned. They had a house fire, 4 houses burned. Not just 1, 4. You're looking at such a fire hazard that you wouldn't even believe because one house catches, it's going to catch both houses on the other side, and it's going to catch the rear house because it's only 15 feet. So if you have any wind at all and a house fire starts, you will lose multiple structures. It's not a up for debate fact, up for debate question. It is a fact. Look at North Davis can tell you that. I'm sorry, South Davis Metro Fire can tell you about it. They've seen it in North Salt Lake where multiple units have caught fire. And my big concern is fire. You put things so close together. It's also seen it in Clearfield where 2 houses burned.
they're 20 feet apart. So any wind, any little wind can create that issue. And R14 is just too small for what they're trying to do. And they've decided that if we can't go through the commission to do what we want, we'll just rewrite the zoning code. And that applies to the whole city. So once you set that precedent, you set that precedent for everywhere in the city. And that's a big responsibility. So I used to be on Roy City's Planning Commission. I've seen it before, and there's some roads you don't want to go down. Thank you.
Thank you. Sir in the back, or ma'am, if you could come forward.
Hi, my name's Elise Jensen. I'm also a resident of North Ogden, and I just wanted to follow up on the fire issue. And I'm not a professional in building or construction, but I do work with the Red Cross on disaster response. And when I look at the plan for that neighborhood, there is 2 ways in and 2 ways out, and that's it. If there is a major house fire on one of those egress, everybody, hundreds of people, are going to have to get their way through the other side. And I think that that's a huge potential public safety issue for those new residents. I would also ask if the public safety folks have looked at the size of the roads that I understand are being proposed, where they're not actually full. Folks can drive 2 cars down and park on each side. Rather, they're much smaller. So what happens if you have 3 or 4 fire engines that are trying to respond to a major fire and they can't get in or they can't get out? This all seems as a general construction of the zone that's being described as a real public health, public safety issue that I would urge you all to consider. Thank you.
Before I call anybody else up, is there anyone here tonight that would speak in favor of this zoning proposal? Because we would like to hear from you. We'd like to hear the opposite side if anybody has that opinion. Okay. So is it safe to say that everyone here tonight would generally echo everything that has been said? Please. So I think we understand what everybody is here to represent tonight, and it couldn't have been more eloquently presented than it has been already. I don't want to disallow anybody to come up and say virtually the same thing if they have it, but if you have something substantially different than that, we would be more than happy to hear that. And ma'am in the front, I know you are very articulate, and and you had your hand raised. Would you like to say something more, or? I'm not going to push you. I thought you had your hand raised, so. Yeah, yeah.
Yes, so I agree with the things that have been proposed, and I appreciate the support. I know you're supposed to dress this way, so I can't really talk to them. But I know that this community, oh, sorry, Mindy Albee, North Ogden. Yes, we as a community have spent hours and hours and hours trying to catch up and to understand what is being proposed and to understand what our rights are and to read through different codes. I feel like all of us have really jumped in and tried to do our civic duty to figure out what's going on here. I do want to speak really quick to the unfairness that I feel it is to change horses in the middle of a zoning case. And the neighborhood had no input on the new zoning code, and the planning department that knew we would be intensely interested didn't reach out, didn't provide any heads up, and out of the blue, it feels like the goalposts were moved. The neighbors are the only ones here that have a stake in this and don't get paid to spend 8 hours a day studying this stuff. We would really like more time to figure this out. What we have digested so far in the short time that we've had is that there's a lot of inconsistency between what is being marketed. Oh, hey, this is Quail Ponds. This is just like Quail Ponds. You love Quail Ponds. You know people in Quail Ponds. Trying to have us swallow it as Quail Ponds. It's not. Quail Ponds has a 1.5 stories. The text amendment is requesting 2. Quail Ponds has a 20-foot front yard setback, and the text amendment is requesting 18. The interior side setback, Quail Ponds has 7, and this text amendment is requesting 5. These are significant percentage changes that they're requesting. The street side setback lines, Quail Ponds has 20 feet, and the text amendment is requesting 15. The rear setback line, Quail Ponds has 20, and the text amendment is for 15. So over and over, you're being lied to. You're being told, hey, this is Quail Ponds. This is something the neighbors already like and already stomach. And when you get down into the detail, it's not the same. So please don't fall for it. If you don't downright just totally dismiss and turn this whole thing down, I would propose that you at least continue it so we have more time to study and give an educated opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. Please, ma'am. One more. Thank you.
Not want to talk tonight, but there's one issue that I,
State your name, please.
well, sorry, Nola Telly, North Ogden, that I've thought about and that I worry about. And that is that the way that development is planned, I don't think it's going to be a lot of elderly people that are going to move in there because they don't like up and down. We don't like up and down. It will probably be people with families, young families. Green Acres School is so overcrowded. And now they are talking about closing the Ben Lomond Elementary School. Where are all these children going? Where, is North Ogden going to build new schools? So that was my only concern.
Thank you, ma'am. Good
Hi,
evening.
I'm Sheena Miles. I'm a resident of North Ogden, and I'm also the PTO president at Green Acres Elementary. And I just wanted to echo her comments that the district is proposing to close Lomond View, which will push the surrounding schools to full capacity. And at the same time, the city is reviewing and approving high-density housing developments within those same boundaries. This raises a fundamental question. Has there been coordinated planning? Sorry, I'm really nervous.
You're doing great.
Is the right hand talking to the left hand? Parents deserve clarity. And where are the additional students from these developments supposed to go to school? What's the plan to ensure that our classrooms aren't squeezed into overcrowded classrooms? I urge you guys to evaluate future development through the lens of actual school capacity and to engage in direct, transparent conversations with Weber School District. Our community needs alignment, transparency, and a forward-looking plan that ensures North Ogden remains a place where families thrive.
Thank you. On the end there, please, come on up.
Hi, Mike Ufano, North Ogden resident. I just wanted to point out on the R14, you have some time now, I think, to do some due diligence. What I noticed was that Mr. Hess and staff had 7 items and not recommendations, but 7 items, 20 bullet points when you analyzed the Atkinson property. I didn't see that here. You had a recommendation at the bottom that said, consider the public hearing, talk about it, and then make a recommendation to council. You have time now that this is postponed, but it sounds like that time may be shorter than the Atkinson property discussion because it may come up sooner. So just in terms of doing the due diligence and taking a close look, it's based on the Quail Ponds template, but it seems like it's tailored by the developer and it's tailored to his needs. And if this is going to be a citywide code, then that's probably something that you want to have some time to think about. So thank you.
Thank you. Noted. Mr. Christensen? Mr. Christensen, if you could come up, please. Good evening, sir.
Thank you. I'm Alan Christensen. I have lived here in North Ogden for 75 years plus. My father was a building inspector here in this town. I've also been a developer here in North Ogden. I'm no stranger to zoning. But just like each of you as a member of the Planning Commission, that's called planning. That isn't called acquiescing to every agreement. I've fought with the Planning Commission on occasion. I also was in the city council for a couple of terms and represented you at the legislature also. So I'm no stranger to zoning, but it is the key point in planning the future. I've seen places, not to mention any names, Ogden, but have an overabundance of high density dwelling now. It scares me what the future is going to bring for all those places. They talk about the ghettos and such in Chicago. I think we're working hard on it in some of these areas. I am opposed to relaxing any of the requirements that promote more high density housing. I would love for it to go the other way. I understand the difficulty that you're all up against. And just to wrap up, thank you for putting in the time and caring. You must love North Ogden at least close to what I do. Thank you for putting in your time, and please try to keep the high density to at the minimum that we can legally get away with. That's a good way to put it. Thank you.
So we hear the message clearly, and we heard it last meeting as well. But because, a developer has requested this to be put on the agenda and have a public hearing about it, this is what we've done tonight. But is there anybody, how about just a show of hands? Everybody would concur with the comments that are said tonight? Yes? Anybody? Something different than that? So.
This is the applicant. Can you hear me?
Sorry, sir, we've got one person coming up to the podium.
Okay.
Please, sir, your name, please.
Lynn Partridge. I am a resident of North Ogden and more specifically Quail Ponds. It just occurred to me that what the developer seems to be trying to do is taking Quail Ponds, just as has been spoken of previously of zoning creep, they're purposely directing it that way. And I would suggest they not look at what may happen, look at what we already lost in the area of larger lots with Quail Ponds. I was involved with the HOA, which was a tremendous failure. We had to ask for that to be rescinded because no one would cooperate with it. And so it's not looking at what we may lose. We already know we have lost already, and to lose additional. And just because I am kind of a soft heart for conservation, there was a flock of white-faced ibis that came every night to these spring ponds in the just east of the Quail Ponds that I live in, which was phase 1. They no longer come to this area. And it's almost as though the people who may buy those more higher density lots, they aren't going to know what they are contributing to. It's not their fault. Just as I feel a little guilty now, realizing that Quail Ponds caused a higher density than was previously in that area. But let's not lose any more. It may not be just the white-faced ibis that no longer come to this area.
Thank you, sir. So I think I have an understanding of everybody's point of view. I would like to hear, just maybe before we close the public hearing, to hear what the applicant would have to say. Mr. Terry, is it Mr. Terry, right? Terry? Yeah, are you still on the line?
I am.
You have the floor, sir.
Oh, I mean, I hear what everybody's saying. I mean, I don't really, like I said, I don't really have any comments right now because I don't know if it's worth talking about if this deal's gonna go forward. But I mean, one thing I'd say is I think I would hate to have everybody come back and say the exact same things over again to the planning commission. If the planning commission is willing to make a ruling on this, and it sounds like from the public and everything else, it's going to be a negative one, that they just do that. So if and when it does have to come back, it will just go to the city council versus having to come back to the planning commission and do this all over again.
Okay, so sir, just to clarify, you would like to not postpone our recommendation on
Correct.
item number 4, but
Yeah.
postpone the discussion on the annexation request itself until the appeal at the county has resolved.
No, I would be fine for the commission to make a recommendation on both because I feel like I know what it's going to be. And instead of having everybody come back to the planning commission meeting and say the same thing over, if and when it ever does come back, it would just go to the city council and then it can be heard there.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you, sir. So just a point of clarification, Mr. Hess, can we go ahead and close this public hearing, have a discussion about the proposed zone text amendment? And then continue to postpone the second item, or it sounds like the applicant has withdrawn his request to postpone.
Yeah, so they're the paying applicant. So you can choose to, I mean, you have to hold the public hearing. So you have held the public hearing, you can take all the comment, close the public hearing, have your deliberation, and then it's up to the applicant either requesting postponement. If they said, no, let's go ahead and ask for a recommendation, you can put that now. That'll just hold the item until it's ready to go to city council. It's really up to the planning commission what they like to do.
Okay, so Mr. Terry, are you requesting at this time that we go ahead and move forward with these items?
Yeah, I'd like to have a recommendation from the planning commission.
Okay,
So
thanks.
close public hearing.
I'm going to hear one more since she's standing here, but we heard everything you said on the public hearing on this property last time. And we've heard everything you've said tonight, but please, ma'am, go ahead.
I've been studying at Weber State, and my main focus point for studying this semester has been affordable housing in Utah. We are dealing with a housing crisis that's global at this point, and I know that our population count is continuing to grow in Utah, and they're suggesting us to do more dense housing. And I 100% understand that, but I think it's also important for North Ogden to understand our mountains and our water retention along with the water flow, like what was said. But I feel like there's places in Utah where it's more accessible, more realistic to do more dense housing. But currently near the mountains in Utah where we have a huge runoff, my property is currently getting flooded by the Paul Atkinsons, along with probably many other neighbors that's currently being flooded. And I don't think that dense housing is going to be able to handle the amount of water that is currently being run off on that property. And so I just want to go because I know that, the counter argument is going to be on affordable housing or creating more housing. And I believe that there is places in Utah to be able to create that. And I am working on coming up with a plan to help with those solutions. I'm currently in college for that right now. And so I also think that the environment and our environment that we create and to be able to make it safe for everybody is just as important. The wind on the Atkinson property is insane coming out of the canyon. We have huge windstorms and the flooding that's currently available. It's very dependent on the builder and how they do it to be able to help control that. But I don't see in the certain plans that it's going to be able to handle the large amount of water that I see flowing through there every spring and currently in the fall.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
I'd like to motion that we close the public hearing.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and echo this. So just kind of like rehash what we did cover at the last meeting in the public hearing. And ultimately, what we had discussed and decided on was that as proposed, this development was really just too far afield. There were just too many exceptions to the rule, and it just really didn't fit. And so rather than make a recommendation at that time to the city council on a specific zone and, like approval of the annexation with a recommended zone designation, because we wanted to see what could the developer come up with, maybe outside of the box under a PUD or something like that, because the property is somewhat unique. And maybe we made some suggestions. But this is my personal opinion comparing what was in this, proposal tonight versus last time. Nothing substantially different was in that drawing. What is though is I couldn't have said it any better than Mr. Brent Call, who was very articulate, and I couldn't have said it any better, is that I almost feel like, by proposing a new zoning designation to fit the project, it really seems disingenuous in some ways. We have a very similar R15 that, and if there is a development that we always want to look at on a case-by-case basis, depending on the property, where it is in the city, how it fits in, that we have this mechanism of a PUD or a development agreement with a specific zone that can be massaged a little bit.
And just for the sake of efficiency, I'm just going to say echoed. It doesn't seem like there's any reason to consider this very not distinct or well thought out zone. So I'll stop there just
Right.
for sake of efficiency. Other
Yes,
thoughts?
yes.
I think that it's pretty clear that the people here would be happy to come back and that they've asked for time and consideration. And so I'm only one person on this committee, but I think it's important to voice that I wouldn't be in favor of making a recommendation on this, because we made a suggestion to come back with some ideas and we don't see that yet.
But doesn't that just mean they don't have ideas? So we need to I would consider that we should put a negative recommendation forward for city council.
Yeah.
And you can vote different than that.
I
if you
probably
think-
will.
And that's
That's
okay.
part of the
I mean, we
discussion.
don't always have to agree on everything, but
I probably will.
okay. I think what we really need to look at is like, the developer really didn't, in my opinion, bring back anything substantially
I
different.
agree.
But I would say that we really have to consider that when we look at this R14, it's a zone for the entire city.
Correct.
Not for this particular property or project. And so is that needed? Is that something we do? Is really just create a new zone to,
Yeah, it's a good point.
specifically designed around a development proposal? That's not generally something we do. We have a mechanism if there is a unique development proposal for somewhere in the city that does seem appropriate for the area. We do have a mechanism in place for that. And we consider that on a case-by-case basis, which we want to do. Where if we establish this new zoning designation and some other property comes before us and meets all of those requirements, we really don't have a whole leg to stand on to make a negative recommendation on it if we don't like it.
Correct.
Yep, I hear you on that. And I think since I voiced I would vote no, I hear what you're saying, that doesn't necessarily preclude people from coming back here and, voicing this about the specific property. That a vote no would be more, no, we don't want this zone.
Right.
So
Correct.
This is all we are on this particular item.
Yep.
So to maybe add
Particular item is only
clarity-
about this zone.
Yeah. Which I
But
think
to
that
add
made-
clarity, I would be happy to throw out a motion that can be seconded or not, and then we can discuss. So I would like to move that we forward a negative recommendation to city council for this legislative amendment to consider amending North Ogden Code Title 11-9 residential and civic zones regarding small lot, single family zones. Once again, a negative recommendation.
Second that.
We can discuss before vote. if
Okay,
there's the
so,
thing.
so just so we get it on the record for the minutes, Commissioner Green made the motion and Commissioner Watson made the second. Okay. So let's go ahead and take a vote. And if you don't agree, it's okay to say no, but understand you're saying
I think
no
there
to
was-
the negative
I
recommendation.
think there was some, and I don't know if per rules we can do this, but I think there was a suggestion of discussing the proposal
Yeah, we can
versus.
discuss before voting.
Yeah, and so
Mhm.
I would be in favor of discussing it as well.
Yes.
If anyone
I'm
else
just-
has-
I just want to make the clarification that a yes vote is for a no recommendation.
I think that's, I think that's really important to clarify for the
It is.
room too.
So
Mr. Watson.
my point here is we're talking about, we sort of have to separate these two items, like Mr. Hess said. We have to separate these two items from each other in this particular instance. We have to decide if R14 is good somewhere in the city.
Right.
That's what we're voting on right now. That I think is what Commissioner Green said, negative recommendation. R14 is not welcome in the city. We would go either more more high density or less high density,
Right.
but not in the middle there.
Right.
Yes,
Correct. And that's what I seconded.
correct. Based
Okay.
on the, I think, well thought out thoughts you've already articulated, Commissioner Nan Carroll.
Then I think we can call for a
Any other
vote.
discussion? This is just on the zoning. Devin.
I know, but I'm gonna make a comment here that it is a little bit of scope creep, but I'm gonna make it anyway. Is for this particular property, one of the issues that's been brought up that I think is a real issue that would need to be super clarified is the water issue. Like as a kid, I walked on that property and there's water coming up from the ground. You know, it's an issue. And so like, I mean, I see a person in the audience where as a kid, I was at his house and went from his house and took Wellingtons and walked across the street and got the boots stuck in the water and had to walk over to their house barefoot because water comes up from the ground in that area. And so on this particular piece of property, I think it is very important to note that however the water flows down through the mountains and it pops up right there, something has got to be looked at because how it's developed, because now it's not fields everywhere. There's houses around that. And I think that's just the pragmatic reality of what is happening on this piece of land. And I think that's an important thing to note.
Again, this is not specific to that piece of land. This is R14.
Yep,
that-
I agree.
Right? So
Yep.
we talk about that land later.
Has withdrawn his request to postpone the second item, so we
So
can
we will
talk
get
about
it.
that now.
Yeah, we will.
And those points are well taken.
Yeah.
I have a,
So we have a
I have just a,
motion and a-
I just have a quick question for Scott, I was gonna try to stay quiet, but I can't.
Same.
We're discussing a new zone. Am I missing it on the zoning map where we're proposing where this new zone would go?
Yeah, so that's the thing about proposing a new zone is that you can write a new zone. And an example is the Century Farm Zone. That was a zone that was written specifically for the property that is right adjacent to the Waterworks Experience over there on Pleasant View Drive between Pleasant View and Loman View. We had a zone that was written. It was essentially the same exact process. It just was surrounded mostly by, well, one side was Public Works and then Lee's Marketplace and not a whole lot of residential folks, right? So when that was originally proposed as a small lot, single family project, it was approved. The zone was there. The zone was applied to the land. It sat for 2 years. It was really hard for the developer to build it based on slope and a number of things. They came back and rezoned it R4. So now that piece of property that was formerly zoned Century Farm Zone is residential R4 multifamily, and the Century Farm Zone just sort of sits there and hovers. So you can write, I mean, there are cities with dozens of zoning laws and rules, but they don't land on the map anywhere, but they're just like an available floating zone. So that's how this one would be initially. Say the city approved R14, but this application didn't come in. It's Commissioner Watson's point that you're considering whether this particular small lot zone with these particular setbacks are good for North Ogden. And then it's up to free market, applicant, property owner, whoever to come in and request to apply that to a piece of property.
Correct.
So yeah,
I would just
there is nowhere
I would
on the
just like
zoning map. that you will see
Commission, fellow commissioners to know I would be more open for discussion on this zone if we had a zoning map proposal on where it would go.
There is, because it's the Pauling annexation. So in this particular case, it's at this location, but when it's when it's a zoning text amendment that's global, it's impractical to mail out 21,000 mailers. So these happen on the global level in commercial, civic, residential zones. I mean, this happens, and I would implore everybody to watch the Facebook page and watch the agendas, because this process happens. And then that gets applied everywhere that zone exists and or that could be rezoned for, right? And so in this particular case, they're just married right next to each other, 2 items. So there's a request to create a zone, and then here's the annexation area that the applicant would like to apply that zone. So they're kind of following one another, which is sometimes the case and sometimes not.
So I stay with that.
Yeah,
second.
Any other discussion before we go ahead? So we have a motion and a second. And just a reminder, a yes vote is for a no recommendation on a new zoning designation of R14. Okay. Commissioner Green,
Yes.
Commissioner Watson,
Yes.
Commissioner Webb,
I'm still going to vote no.
okay. Commissioner Gardner, Commissioner Bailey,
Yes.
Commissioner Neighbor,
Yes.
and I vote yes. So did you get that vote? So our recommendation to the city council is going to be to not to institute this R14 zone within the city of North Ogden. Okay. So we were going to postpone item number 5, but the developer, as I understand it, has requested that we go ahead and move forward with it. Is that your understanding as well?
Yep.
Okay.
But we will not be having a public hearing.
Yeah, I'd
We
like to.
already had a public.
Yeah, so I want to clarify that because I reached out to our city attorney, and there are times in state code when you are the land use authority and you are the location in the Land Use Development Management Act, Title 10 of the state code, where you hold the public hearing. And then it becomes a public meeting at city council. Annexation is its own weird element of state code. So in annexation, and John sent me the actual state statute, it says to adopt a recommended annexation, a municipal body shall hold a public hearing on the annexation policy plan that has been recommended by a planning commission. So there's no obligation to hold a public hearing at planning commission for this, because the public hearing will be held at city council. Our city recorder sent out 809 mailers, so that's been very well noticed. The original annexation was going to go forward on December 9th, but due to the protest of the annexation, it's been kicked to a future meeting. That then I don't know what the obligation is. It's outside of my hands. I'm not the city recorder's office, but there's no obligation, and that's per John Call, our city attorney, to hold a public hearing on the annexation piece during your planning commission discussion. So you can still discuss the item. You can make recommendation, and the developer or the applicant is still on the call, so they can speak if they want to, or you want to hear from them. And then the formal public hearing for annexation happens with the city council.
Okay.
Before we move on to the next item, can I clarify one thing? I've never seen this done before, and so I don't know if it's even possible. But is my only, in voting for that, are my only options yes or no, or can I abstain?
I don't know. I don't have John on speed dial.
Yeah. Well, I just
I
wanna-
would, you can abstain. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, so you can, we have a quorum, so.
Yeah, I'd like to put on the record that I would like to abstain, if that's not okay.
Other than a negative.
Yeah, because I want to make sure that the reason that I voted in a different way is clarified through the notes.
Okay.
So I want to make sure that that isn't, as it goes to city council or whatever, but that's duly noted.
Right. Fair.
So
Well,
Please don't yell out, ma'am. Thank you.
am I okay to respond to the audience with that? Yeah, I'm sorry, I can't, you know.
We're in the discussion phase.
Yeah, just per rules of decorum, if I start responding to people in the audience that, you know, this thing can devolve out of control. So I'm more than happy to talk to you one-off if you'd like, you know. And that goes for anybody. I don't want to be in.
So we did have a public hearing on this last week, and I believe last 2 weeks ago, and I
And
believe
the-
everybody was here, right?
And that one I'll clarify too, because I looked back at the agenda. So the agenda was listed as discussion on annexation. And the public hearing piece that was for the rezone that was off of 600 East or so, 650 East and 2100 North, kind of consumed all of the items that were on the agenda. We had 150 people in the room. So there actually wasn't a public hearing listed or notified on that item. When I sent the agendas forward for the item to be posted, it was under my legislative item list, which typically by city code puts you in the recommending place you in the public hearing place. But annexation is like this weird third party, completely different process. So in this case, it says public hearing. John says by state code, there's no obligation of the planning commission to hold a public hearing. We certainly heard a lot of comments
I know we did
on the
take public
proposal.
comment.
Yeah.
Last time. And we got some very good comments
Mm-hmm.
last time. And I think everybody was here and heard those. And ultimately, I think we had a lengthy discussion. And then what we did is we just postponed making a recommendation on the annexation and recommended applying a specific zone because I think we wanted to leave it open for the developer to maybe bring something else back that would maybe be more in alignment with our current zones that we have. And something that was based on maybe some of the feedback we got last time. So with that, I think let's go ahead and cover this item number 5, consideration, discussion, and work session on annexation requests for the Atkinson Pauling property located at approximately 1978 North, 1150 East. Mr. Hess, I don't know if you want to have any further presentation or
Yeah,
if
so-
not, I'll just go right to the applicant.
So I can clarify what the process the planning commission would be looking to do per city code. And that is you are looking at a recommendation for what zoning district to apply to a piece of property that has requested annexation. So you could apply manufacturing for all the recommendation cares in the process itself, right? I mean, your charge here tonight is to consider the area of the city, the general plan, surrounding zoning, public sentiment, and apply a zone to it. And so right now, the zones that you'd have to apply are any of the 13 that we have in our current zoning code. I think you'd have a hard time making the argument for, commercial or manufacturing, but hey, they're there. They're available zoning codes. So your job tonight is you're not weighing in on whether you should or should not annex the property. The property is in our annexation declaration. We physically can provide water to it. We can provide sewer to it. The applicant would have to exhibit how they can, stormwater the property, develop it, whatever else it is. So you choose a zone. The applicant's desired zone was the one you just voted on to recommend a negative recommendation to the city council. So at this point, it's in your hands to say the annexation request will go for, you recommend, and then you choose a zone. So we have R15, small lot, single family, R18, which is what Ward Farms is developed under, R110, which is what Fernwood is developed under. You have residential RE20, that's half-acre lots. We have a few PUD zones, but they really don't count. You could use the Century Farm zone, that's now just a floating zone out there. So it's really up to you. The applicant also, interestingly enough, in the annexation process, doesn't have to prepare a concept plan. They can just come in and request a rezone. And rezones with an idea of what we're going to get, like what the city council is going to get with some assurance, are more likely to pass, but that's not necessarily always the case. I mean, this could come in as this number of acres in this configuration, and we want X zone applied to it, and there's no concept plan that comes along with it. So in this case, they laid out a project that met their desires for the project and needed a specific zone to make that, facilitate it. But at this point, it's up to the planning commission what zoning designation makes the most sense to recommend to the city council. And then it's ultimately in their hands to apply that zone, not apply that zone, choose to accept or not accept the annexation. That all happens by the legislative body.
Okay. And so it really, there really wouldn't be any benefit to postpone this item and pending the results of the appeal process. Because really all we're doing is recommending like what we would propose this zone to be.
Right.
And then the city council will hold a public hearing,
Mhm.
will decide whether they want to even annex the property in light of the appeal process that's going on.
Right.
And then choose whether they would like to agree with the zoning recommendation that we made.
Yep. And the city council, you can think of your one piece of the process. So this has also been sent out to our culinary water department, our sewer department, our public works, our engineering, fire marshal has an opportunity to speak, public safety. So everybody gets a piece of the review pie, right? And the planning commission's charge again is we would apply, our recommendation is to apply this zoning district, and that's your piece. So it all gets rolled together, and at that public hearing, it's the multi-departmental recommendations along with planning commissions, and then that's the package the city council has to grapple with on annexation.
Okay.
Okay.
Any questions before we hear from the?
I do have a question, Scott. The original proposal, not talking about lot sizes or any of that, but what was interesting is it had the 2-story with no basement. Is there any world in which, I mean, that seems to make a lot of sense because we know that there's water that's so readily accessible under this land. But there's no way to land there now with a zoning designation, correct? So the developer.
The zoning
Consider-
designation
No, no.
should have a height limit in it.
Yeah.
The
So
height limit,
It
but
already-
basements, because one of the things he was trying to achieve, right, was no basement, but let me go higher originally.
yeah, but we don't have a rule anywhere in our zoning code that
Right.
says you can't have a basement.
Right.
So it's
Okay.
just if
So that's like the only unfortunate thing for future homeowners in this area. That's a little unfortunate if they go with basements. But anyway, I just thought that was like the one good thing from the original proposal, but.
So citywide, in most zones, the height maximum is what?
is 35 feet, and everything except for the R15 and Quail Ponds are both 27 feet. And the R15, if you want a project to tie it to visually, is Legacy and Legacy North. So that's right behind the city here. That it's 55 and older communities, how it was originally proposed. The northern section is all private streets. So the city doesn't snowplow, maintain, do anything with the asphalt on those. They're private. That's not uncommon. We have several developments across the city that have private streets on both single family and multifamily developments. So that's that particular project. And then in Quail Ponds, it's a variety of home sizes. And with Ward Farms and Fernwood, the nature of Ivory having built a lot of single story homes is what they built. They could have built all 35-foot tall single family homes. It's just, it was dependent on whatever floor plan, whatever the market was doing at that time. It doesn't preclude somebody from going out there and pulling the roof off their house and maximizing the height to 35 feet.
Thank you.
Any other questions before we hear from the applicant? Mr. Terry, are you still on the line?
I am.
would you have anything to contribute to our discussion? I know we discussed it at length a couple of weeks
Yeah.
ago.
Yeah, obviously we were asking for the zone that was in consideration today. With that being a negative recommendation, I can't imagine that's going to be the zone that you propose to the city council. I think the next zone we would ask, probably would be easy for you to suggest this be annexed under, is the R18 that it's surrounded by. So that would be my thoughts.
Thanks. Does anybody have any questions for the applicant?
No, that was the question I had.
Yeah, and I think after our discussion, that was kind of where we came to, was an R18. And then I think one of the commissioners had kind of said, well, let's not be too hasty. Maybe there's something creative out there that the developer could come up with that, maybe something similar to the senior community that is up by the sod farm, or, with no
Right.
basement or something. Let's keep an open mind and see what they come back with.
And
So,
for
but-
future reference, we saw how that worked.
Yeah,
That
well-
backfired a little.
Yeah, but it sounds like from the applicant himself, R18 is probably something that he could work with. And it sounds like what would be in the surrounding community.
Mhm.
It still, there's still always the issue of the water containment and all of that. But, I think, and I might put it back to Mr. Hess or somebody, but I feel like there was a lot of discussion about a design for draining the water that's there now that would actually improve this particular area of the city that is prone to flooding, and that by developing it in certain ways with, certain retention basins and things like that, that it would actually improve the water drainage for everybody around. But maybe you could speak to that again or reiterate that.
Yeah, that's kind of the hard part about the process we're at. So the process we're at is just applying the rules and regulations to an individual piece of ground. It's not an assurance from you that the project, that you're not saying the only way we'll do this is if you follow the rules, because they have to follow the rules to do the project. And we have, you think of development up the hill, right? We've got pieces of property that are in the city, zoned, available for development today, but we don't have culinary water for. So for them to develop that property, the hurdle to clear is developing additional culinary water resources. In this property, the hurdle, one of several, but the hurdle to clear is you have to safely account for and get the stormwater off of the property. And so that's not dissimilar with any of the challenges available to any individual piece of ground. It's just really top of mind with the recent storms and people's area knowledge of the area of it being a wet piece of property. But applying the zone doesn't say, but you have to make sure it's dewatered, because when the subdivision comes in, the city engineer, the city won't accept it if it doesn't, if the stormwater doesn't address the flooding, essentially. Yeah.
There any other thoughts down the line about R18 versus something else? Does anyone else have differing of opinions of what the applicant is thrown out?
Do we do a public hearing for this, or what's the process here? I'm trying to understand.
It goes to city council.
Yeah.
We make a recommendation, then there will be a notice and a public hearing at city council.
It was erroneously listed as a public hearing, which is
So we're not going to do a
unfortunate.
hearing tonight on this. It's just a
Right.
recommendation.
Ago, we actually did take public comment on
Yeah.
this particular.
Yep, it's all fresh.
And because of the error, we did let people speak on both topics.
Yep.
So any other thoughts besides R18, or does someone want to throw out a motion to discuss?
I mean, R18 seems,
1.8 seems great.
There's a precedent.
yeah, that seems similar to the area.
Surrounding.
Yeah,
surrounding
I just want to make sure I'm not missing anything.
Yeah.
But
No, if you look at that map, Johnson, it
Yeah,
butts
no,
up against that, and it butts up against R15, and it
Yep.
butts up against R110.
yeah,
And so I think that,
Is it-
I think that's reasonable, and I think it's a reasonable recommendation, middle ground, negotiated point.
That's a fair point. It feels like it's meeting in the middle.
Sure. And I think we eventually got what we wanted, which is less density.
yep. And I do think it's important that there'll be a public hearing at the city council. for
Yeah.
that. I think that creates a forum for.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think we collectively know very clearly what
Yeah.
the folks in this audience
And
Yeah.
one of the
think about the
things
proposed
they
R1.
they did express very eloquently last meeting, it was wanting a zone that matched the ones surrounding. So it does feel like this proposal meets that request from the public.
Yep.
I would make a motion if we're ready. I'd motion to recommend annexation of, let me just make sure I get this right, the Atkinson Pauling property located at approximately 1978 North, 1150 East, and recommend to apply zoning R18.
I'll second.
Okay, so we have a motion by Commissioner Watson, a second by Commissioner Gardner. And any discussion before we take a vote? Okay. So Commissioner Neighbor,
Yes.
Commissioner Bailey,
Yes.
Commissioner Gardner,
Yes.
Commissioner Webb,
Yes.
Commissioner Watson,
Yes.
Commissioner Green,
Yes.
and I vote yes. So that would be a unanimous recommendation.
Well, we still have, thank you very much. And I just thought about this, while we still have all the great members of the public right now, we will have 2 planning commission seats available. So I would love for everyone here to make an application. It's open until December 31st for the positions. We have 1 cycling off, 1 term that's ending, and we would love for you to apply and come and sit as a member of the planning commission and help us make these recommendations for the city. Okay.
Thank you, everyone. I appreciate all of your comments, and we want you to know that you're heard here, so appreciate it. And I love the red. So, the next item is just public comments for anything not on the agenda tonight. Is there anybody here that's here for an item not on the agenda?
Mindy Albee again, still from North Ogden. I just, again, want to thank you guys for being here. I know that sometimes our red shirt dragon gets kind of excited. But we really do appreciate that you are partners with us in this, and that we recognize that you have jobs and families and other things, and that you're not paid. So thank you for your service on behalf of us, even if sometimes it doesn't come across as warm fuzzy. So
We get $35 a meeting.
do
We get $35 a meeting, and that, you know, that's it for everything. But there's also pool passes. I don't know if that will be renewed this year. But you guys are so organized as a group, like seriously, planning commission's great. And I'm not going to be renewing. I'll be public about that. I'm not, because I got a couple of young kids and things are a lot busier in my life, but I love this. You know, one day I'll come back and volunteer for some sort of committee. And mostly because I love North Ogden, and I can tell that you guys love your community. And that's a great thing about this area. You know, it matters. And show up to city council like we're appointed. They vote. Your red shirts will get their attention. Good.
I've got one quick comment, just to echo Mindy, and appreciate you guys and all that you do. But my comment has to do with the development there and the road issue. And the very last phase of Quail Ponds has not been built on yet. And I hope the developer's still listening, because if somebody was quick about buying up a lot or 2 in Quail Ponds, they could bring a road straight down out of that piece into Quail Ponds, adding an additional exit point out of that area. So anyway, just a comment about that's an opportunity, but somebody will have to move on it pretty quick if they want to take advantage of it.
It's a helpful suggestion.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, well, let's go ahead and move on. Are there any remarks from planning commission members? Oh,
Sorry, I just want to maybe speak for the developer. I've spoken with the developer. He has tried to buy those properties. My guess is the Quail Ponds does not want that development leaking out through their neighborhood. They haven't been able to buy them.
Thanks.
okay. Any remarks from planning commissioners before we?
I just wanted to say really quick, I think it's absolutely amazing to live in a city where everyone is so passionate. It's just really heartwarming. So that's it. That's my comment.
Any other comments? Any comments from Mr. Hess from Community and Economic Development?
So I would plan for planning commission. We'll have meetings on Wednesday, the 3rd of December and Wednesday, the 17th of December. The city council will hold their work session on December 2nd, and then only one item on December 9th, canceling the meeting or moving the meeting from December 23rd, the week of Christmas. So just know that there's a little bit of a constrained meeting schedule.
So we, 3 December and
So we will have our December meetings, yep,
Okay.
which is the 1st and 3rd Wednesday. City council will have the 1st and 2nd Tuesdays.
At a dinner.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
all in favor?
Yes.
Hey.
Thank you, everyone.
That public, I guess we didn't. I know, I was.